Okay then, folks. Let's start off. So thank you all for joining us this afternoon. I know it's a little bit confusing. It says on my screen that I am Kate Erica, but I am not. I am Charline Proctor, and I am the Pastoral Lead at North Anglia International School, and I will be doing the presentation on understanding low mood and depression in young people this afternoon. So this presentation is being recorded and it will be available to you after. So please don't worry if you want to refer to it again, it will be available to you. Also, I'm going to cover quite a range of topics and areas today. So if you do have any questions, please can you just write them into the chat box for me, and then I can review them at the end. That would be fantastic. Thank you very much. Okay, so let's get started. So like I said, I am the Pastoral Lead at North Anglia. And what that means is I work very closely with the head of pastoral, as well as our heads of houses within school. And our pastoral system at North Anglia involves a head of pastoral, myself, the pastoral lead, who assists working with the heads of houses, like I've just said, but also we have a transition coordinator whose prime responsibility is to run the transition events in school, particularly any new arrivals, and also for our students that are moving from year 6 into year 7. So let's start off. Forgive me, here we go. So I've just put a range, well, I've just put three statements onto the screen. Now, just going to give you a minute or so, just to read those and just have a little think. So 50% of mental health difficulties start before 18. Depression is feeling low or unhappy for a prolonged period of time. Lifestyle habits such as sleep, physical activity, what you eat and drink have a massive influence on your state of mind. Now, I wonder, do we think any of those are false? Please feel free to have a guess. But if not to worry. Okay. So in fact, they are all true to a degree. However, the actual percentage of mental health difficulties that start before 18 are a little bit higher than that. And actually, to be more exact, 50% of mental health difficulties actually start before the age of 15. So this is why I'll work, this is why for me, I'll work with young people to help them identify low mood, and when they are feeling depressed is very important. So let's carry on with this. So before I get in full flow of this presentation, I just wanted to just to highlight this to you all, that this presentation is largely based on a course that I participated in personally via FutureLearn, which is some of you may be aware of this, but it's an online learning platform, and it has a range of good courses that are accredited by various different unis around the world. This one in particular was accredited by the University of Reading in the UK, and if this presentation whets your appetite a little bit and gets you thinking you might want to actually do the course yourself, I would fully recommend it, and you can find the link to it just here on this slide. So during this presentation, I am going to focus on, first of all, an introduction to adolescent depression, the impact of lifestyle, understanding and addressing behaviour patterns in depression, understanding and addressing thinking patterns and adolescent depression, family life and communication, and lastly, seeking further help. So it's really important that we understand the state of of how mental health is currently with our young people. And it's really important that we do recognise, support and direct positive influence to our young people. So as we know, as educators, the consequences of untreated depression for young people are significant. And this can lead to poorer performance at school, a disrupted family life, and an increased chance of self-harm and distress, which will more than likely continue into adult life. So the earlier that we can help our young people with depression, the more likely that they will go on to make a full recovery. And as we talked about before, or as we addressed before, 70% of mental health difficulties start before 18, and it's 50% that actually start before the age of 15. So to begin to think about why this happens, it's really fascinating to look at the science behind the adolescent brain. So if we start off with the prefrontal cortex, so the area of the brain right at the front, and the roles of the prefrontal cortex are decision-making, planning, social interactions, understanding others and self, and impulse control. So during adolescence, this is still developing. It's still not fully wired. So the effect that this has on teenagers, it makes teenagers, it's very difficult for teenagers to understand other perspectives. So that's something that is a chemical, biological trait of a teenager. Now, in terms of the limbic system, which is found a little bit, let's go back, try and see multiple things at once here. So the limbic system, and that's towards the center, it's very deep within the brain. And these roles are emotion and award-seeking behavior. So during adolescence, it's a very sensitive area. It's still developing, and as a result, there is very poor impulse control. So the effects on that we see with teenagers is that they are more likely to engage in risky reward-seeking behaviour, such as driving too fast, taking drugs, or having alcohol. Now, if there's a great TED talk just at the bottom by a neuroscientist called Sarah Jane Blakemore, and that's a fantastic talk on TED Talk, which again will just give you a little bit more information on the science behind the adolescent brain. So what is depression and when to be concerned? So depression is not a fleeting period of low mood. And depression is feeling low or unhappy for a prolonged period of time. So if you have a student that is coming to you that is saying that they are a little bit unhappy one day, this feeling may still be there in a week or so, just monitor that, just monitor it. But when we're talking about if someone is depressed, it's for a prolonged period of time. It's something that you notice very regularly about this child. Often there'll be a loss of interest in and enjoyment of usual activities. Their mood may be very irritable and in some cases very angry, and behaviour that represents a marked change for what is normal for that young person. And as educators that come into contact with our children very regularly, you obviously know what your individual students are like, and you'll be able to see that change. So again, there's a little link there, just see a more detailed list of possible signs. So it can be very hard to spot in young people for a variety of reasons, and this may be less mental illness is obviously less visible than a physical illness, such as a broken arm, which does make identifying things just a little bit harder. it may just look like normal teenage behaviour as well, because obviously we've just talked about where the brain isn't quite wired up properly at that age, so strange behaviour will occur. A young person may also go out of the way to hide their difficulties and not want to talk to people about how they are feeling. So in my experience, I've come across students that have actually felt very embarrassed about how they've been feeling, and how they shouldn't be feeling like this. That's how they were thinking, and so as a result, they were trying to cover it up as much as possible. So it's just something to be aware of there. So there are many causes of depression, and this is something that we can just be aware of. So teenagers may be particularly vulnerable to these triggers because of the great physical, emotional, social, and cognitive changes that occur during adolescence. So when we talk about a trigger here, it's something that may occur just before a period of low mood. So we tend to break these up into 3 areas: social, biological, and psychological factors. In terms of social, conflicts in relationships. Now this could be with family or friends, and a fear of failing. You know, there's lots of teenagers, you know, especially the students that we teach are very fearful of failing and letting themselves and their family down, and also their teachers. And that's also in hobbies as well. So that's something to just be aware of. In terms of biological factors, so we're talking about DNA, genetics, developmental factors. Depression can run in families, but it does not mean that it is genetically determined. So if a child's parent has got some form of depression or mental illness, it does not mean that the child will develop that. We do see depression running in families though, but that's often because families share environmental factors, such as obviously they live in a shared house, they will have a similar lifestyle, things like that. Psychological factors, so a low resilience or ability to cope when things go wrong. And that's something that we like to develop in our, with our students in North Anglia, is focusing on a resilience. So not just giving up straight away, having the tools within themselves to be able to look at a situation from multiple angles, and try to solve the problem instead of being overwhelmed by it. So the negative impacts of these triggers can be minimalised if young people feel supported through their difficulties and encouraged to develop resilience methods. This will help them to cope when things go wrong. So throughout this presentation, I've done a few how-to slides. So this one in particular is how to talk about your observations with a child or with a student. So something that I didn't mention right at the start also was this was originally this presentation. It's been slightly tweaked for you guys, but this was originally a presentation for originally a presentation for our parents, that was developed during the COVID pandemic when it first started earlier this year. So I won't go through all of this with you because I'm sure that you'll want to have a look at this in your own time. But this is just a few conversational starters that you could use and share with members of your school community as well. So the impact of lifestyle is very important, and we touched on that right at the start of the presentation. Something that we come across a lot personally at our school is that often we will find that children who are seeming a bit irritable or just aren't concentrating in class, if something just doesn't seem quite right. And often, if you ask them how many hours of sleep they're getting, you'll be surprised how many hours they feel is okay to have a sleep. I think I had a child once who told me they slept for 3 hours and that was absolutely fine by them. So there's a little bit of educating that we have to do with our students, and that's important. So making sure that they're aware of the importance of sleep. And actually, like during sleep, and again, there's lots of great stuff on TED Talks about the importance of sleep and what actually happens with your brain during sleep. So it's important to have a regular routine, and especially when students are beginning to go back to school after a prolonged period away from school, it's important to try to get that across to parents as well, and encourage them to encourage their children to get back into a regular routine with sleep. Because often, again, children won't necessarily be going to bed and waking up at the same time as they would be for school. And I'm sure teachers are the same. I know I'm the same. I will, as a general rule, get up a little bit later in the holidays and go to bed a little bit later. But if you go straight to, from your holiday routine to your school routine, it can be a shock. So we do try to encourage our parents to encourage children to go to sleep, to get their regular school routine sleep pattern, maybe 2 to 3 days before they actually go back to school. Just a bit of less of a shock for the children when they go back. So ideally, a room should only be associated with sleeping. And we need to be realistic with this point, because obviously we all live in Hong Kong, and we know that space is very, very, very valuable and very minimal in some cases. So most, I know a lot of students, for example, are using their bedrooms for study as well as sleeping. But again, if we can establish a routine with our students where, if they are doing their homework, they're only doing it until a certain time, and then they put their laptop, their books away, and then the room becomes solely their sleeping area. That will just make their brains much more relaxed and ready for a good night's sleep. So eating and drinking as well, having a balanced diet, carefully monitoring junk food, and that includes any form of fizzy, sugary drink. I'm encouraging a regular water intake as well. Again, something that we do at Nord, we do encourage all our students to have a reusable water bottle, and to encourage them to be drinking, obviously during breaks, lunch times, and filling that up as well, so that they're becoming aware of what makes their body feel good, what their body needs. So again, routine. I'm going to talk about routine a lot in this presentation, but regularly eating and drinking habits are very beneficial, because it stops your body from storing up sugars, or feeling the need to have like a quick sugar fix to keep you awake, which I know that we can all be a bit guilty of at times. But encouraging families to model good behaviour, so not just in terms of what they're eating, but also a social element too. Eating is a fantastic way of being social with family, and using that time for good quality family time and talk. So that's something that I very much encourage. Physical activity, it's not just for the body, it's also for the mind. So exercise, it gives us hormonal mood boosts. There's also social benefits. There's a lot of, obviously things at the moment are a little bit, just a little bit, it's unnormal at the moment. Usually there are lots of social activities that involves physical exercise, which are very accessible in Hong Kong. And again, looking at the family to model good lifestyle choices. So again, this is another one of my how-to sheets. So this is just giving some ideas to encourage healthy eating with students. And there's a little bit on there about flavonoids and complex carbohydrates that are very good for mood enhancing stimulus. So remember, again, mealtime is also about socializing. So eating with family, away from devices, and actually encouraging children to be, to be part of the preparation of meal times as well. That's also something that's very, very beneficial. So many parents in the past, when I've spoken to them, have been concerned about their child's exercise routines, and actually sometimes, like us all, some children really love exercise, some really don't. Some have previously loved it and are, because they're in a bit of a dark place, or find it very difficult to do the things that they would usually like to do. But this is just a little bit of a few ideas on how to encourage that exercise with children, depending on their mindset or their attitude towards exercise. So that's something that I'll leave you to revisit at a later point. So understanding and addressing behaviour patterns. This is key in identifying obviously the depression and the state of mind of our students. So when you are very low, when you are depressed, everything feels harder. Even just getting out of bed in the morning can be the hardest job in the world. It can, just sitting up on the sofa can be very difficult. So very basic things can be exceptionally difficult. And sometimes these will seem easier to avoid. And then as a result, this is going to cause more long-term problems. And you can see by my little cycle of events, that's just an example of how something can be formed into a proper negative cycle that's very difficult to break. So missing out on opportunities that could boost moods, that is also a negative impact of these cycles, and they may even lead to friendship issues and misunderstandings. And I think that's key to highlight there, misunderstandings. So there's a lot of very common thinking errors in depression. So I've put, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 very typical examples of thinking errors. So black and white thinking, that's the kind of thinking when I can't see anything right these days, everything I do is wrong. It's very this or that. There's no in between there. Mind reading. So that's when the depressed individual or the low mood individual may be thinking, maybe thinking about what other people are thinking. So for example, thinking that, like, the teacher may think that they're lazy or that they're pathetic. So it's never knowing themselves that these people feel that way, but they're just assuming that this person thinks of them in that way. So predicting the worst, it'll be awful, I won't be able to stand it. So always looking at the negative, over generalizing. So just saying, I'm a real loser, everything is awful, not being able to necessarily unpick the problems, but just really focusing on maybe one really strong feeling. Jumping to conclusions, it'll be better off not going to school at all. So again, not really thinking about the process and not taking the time to think about it, but just jumping in to that conclusion straight away. Personalizing, so a lot of self-blame. If it goes wrong, it'll all be my fault. So you'll find that students with with very low mood, students are in a bit of a dark place, may find that group work at school can be very difficult for them, not just because it's socializing difficulties, but also they'll kind of feel like they've not got enough self-worth, and they'll just be thinking, oh, it'll be my fault if it all goes wrong. So that's something just to be aware about. And also, blowing things out of proportion totally, and just thinking I do nothing I ever do is ever right. So again, not being able to see any positive there. So I've put a few thoughts on here, and these are again some quite common thoughts from students who have, or young people that do have low mood or depression. So these thoughts are: I won't understand what anyone's talking about. I feel stupid. They'll think I'm pathetic. The teacher will think I'm lazy. I'm a real loser. I'll feel even worse. Everyone will look at me. So it's important that we help break this cycle of negative thought, like what we just looked at on the previous slide. So I guess what I would like you to think about is, what could you say to a student that was having these thoughts? If you had a student in front of you who would come to see you, or you were just having a conversation with one of your students, what could you say to them that could help change the way they saw the situation? Because we know that they are just focusing on the negative here. They're in this spiral of negative thought. So it's something just to think about. I've put a few on here just to give you a few ideas, but by no means is this the only options at all. So thought-wise, I won't understand what anyone's talking about. I'll feel stupid. So again, they're predicting the worst. Do they actually know what you will understand? And also, a good thing to remember: just because you think it, it doesn't make it true. So the thoughts in your head aren't necessarily the truth, and that's really. And I feel like when you say that to a student, it makes them really think about, it really makes them question what they're thinking. And I know with our IB curriculum, we develop TOK, and that kind of idea of how do you know what you know? So it's getting them to think about those, in that kind of way. So they'll think I'm pathetic, the teacher will think I'm lazy. Again, mind reading. Will they know? Do you know if this is true? How could you find out? I'm a real loser. What would you say if your best friend said this about herself or himself? So getting them to relate it back to their own personal relationships and what they would be thinking if someone had said it to them. I'll feel even worse. Again, predicting the future. And getting them to really think about, again, how can you possibly know this? Everyone will look at me. If they did, what else could this mean? So just because they're looking at you doesn't mean that they're thinking negatively about you at all. Is it possible that they could be pleased to see you, especially if a student has not been in school for a while? So these are the kinds of things that are quite common, very common questions that people of low mood and depression can often keep on asking themselves and really dwell on it. So when we talk about rumination, we're talking about a thought that keeps on occurring, that they keep on dwelling on, that they keep on thinking about, they can't get rid of. So in order to break this cycle, we need to change behaviour and guiding towards positive reinforcement, and that includes with values. So what we talk about of value, we're talking about something that gives you a sense of purpose and meaning. They give us a personal guidance on how to approach areas in life and help to understand what is important to you as an individual. And whenever we're talking about mental health, I'm a big believer in purpose. If you have a purpose in life, then you have direction, you have a value, you feel like you're worth something. And often these young people that we do work with have lost their purpose, or in many ways they're just finding their purpose. So talk to your child, your student, about activities that they value. It's a key time, adolescence, for identity development. And like what I just said, often these students just haven't found their calling yet. They haven't found their purpose. So values are often influenced by family, society, and peers. So friends in particular have, especially in teenagers, make up a strong percentage of influence. So encourage your child to make time for activities that they personally value. It's not just about academics. We need to move away from just focusing on academic pressures. We need to be developing students, young people that have varied interests. That's not just for their personal well-being, but also when they as they develop through life, especially going into university applications. This is what universities and employers are looking for. They're looking for activities that this individual has chosen to personally follow, and things that they are personally really passionate about. So ways of thinking: planning, wondering, hoping, imagining, and remembering. So these are all ways that we can train people's brains to get out of that negative cycle. So by challenging depression, by changing key behaviours and associating thoughts, speech, images, words, and smell. Depressed teenagers have difficulties in thinking activities such as problem solving, following instructions, and remembering things like phone numbers. I know I often get a little bit frustrated, especially during this online learning, where you might be talking to a class and you may tell them exactly what you want them to do, and then they just kind of go, what? It's not necessarily because they are being rude or obnoxious, but it's maybe just because their brain isn't quite wired up yet. So what I find is always kind of having, for key things that you want them to know, just having a key kind of list or some brief bullet points just so they can jog their memory. So thoughts are mainly negative that go round and round in their head. So things like, I'm useless, it won't get better, the world is unfair. Again, it's this type of negative cycle. So to break that, we need to check, catch, and challenge those negative thoughts. When you are talking to a depressed individual, or an individual who's not in a good place, they might not be depressed, but they may just be in a very low mood. There is nothing worse, and I'm sure you can relate to this, when you've had a very stressful day and then someone's just kind of gone in all happy and smiley and said, hello, isn't everything great? And you're sat there going, no, it's not today. This is what our young people are feeling, and if you are depressed, especially, this is this constant positivity and constant chirpiness can be very irritating. So we need to just be aware that we need to recognize their thoughts, we need to validate their feelings, we need to make sure they understand that what they are feeling is valid. It's completely okay to feel confused, to feel a bit lost, and just actually hearing someone validate and recognize your feelings will mean so much to them. So something along the lines of, so what I'm hearing is you don't like being in that group. That must be frustrating. So you've identified what you're hearing, and you're just, you're saying, this is what I'm hearing, tell me if I'm wrong. And you're kind of saying, well, this must be frustrating. But always be asking for clarification from your young person here. So we want to focus on helping to break the cycle. So we've identified, we've recognized, but we're trying to, break that cycle for them. We're trying to get them to think differently, to feel better. So identifying when they feel low and introduce a different way of looking at the situation is a priority at this stage. So the little illustration at the bottom, if you want to say thank you for having hope in me this whole time, don't say sorry, I'm such a disappointment. Again, pushing that negativity aside and actually just thinking, okay, what's another way of looking at this? So again, another little how-to sheet there for you that obviously you can spend a little bit of time in your own time just to focus on and see and just read through it and digest. But some key ways to get away from those stuck thoughts are distraction, letting negative thoughts go and acceptance, organising thoughts, giving time restrictions, and identifying safe spaces and people of trust. So we're just coming to the end of the presentation now, where we're just talking about family life and the importance of that. And I'm sure many of you will be in positions where you are having contact with parents at some point, whether that be in official open days or correspondence and via email. As teachers, we do come in contact with parents a lot. And it's important that if we're identifying that a child is in a low mood, we need to be making sure that communication with home is solid. We need to be working with these parents and carers in order to do the best by the child. There's no good you really spending hours putting interventions in when mum and dad or whoever's looking after them at home just doesn't have a clue what's going on in school. I've been in a position in the past where I've put, I've really noticed that this child hasn't been in the best way. And when I've contacted home, home just thought that everything was normal. They just hadn't recognised it. And especially in these strange times where everyone is, let's face it, everyone is learning how to get through this. We're not experts of how to deal, how to deal with pandemics here. We're learning. This is the first time we're all having to adapt, and that includes parents as well. And many of the times, as I'm sure that we're aware, parents have been having to juggle such a lot with work, with their own work pressures, but also making sure that they're supervising their children or organising that supervision. So it's been very tough. It's been tough on everyone. So in terms of communicating with family, these are a few points that I've highlighted, or what was suggested actually during the course via Reading University, to promote less conflict at home. So there's a few little areas where you as a parent may say, but actually the students are hearing something completely different. So it's important again that you're kind of aware that the adolescent brain, especially if they're in a low mood or depression, they may hear something that you haven't intended to say. So just it's just important to recognize that. So again, just another little how-to sheet to promote good communication and avoiding conflict within families. And I've talked about the importance of communication, and this is just a little screenshot of a presentation that we've given to our families, and it's just a straight up this is the key people in the pastoral team. This is what we do. This is how to contact us. And this has worked out really well in the past. Just means that, you know, there's that sense of connection straight away. And actually putting names to faces as well. It'd be a very busy slide if we put all the faces of the people on there. But putting the heads of houses and the leadership team as well, you know, it takes us away from just being names to actually actual humans that can support the children. So that's something that we found to be very beneficial, and I'm sure you all do that at your schools at the start of the year and at regular intervals throughout. So I've talked about giving links to other helpful websites and services, and we actually use Firefly a lot in North Anglia, Hong Kong, and we've got a specific parental page that's got lots of links to various helpful websites, and I'll share a few of those with you very shortly, so you have them and you can of course take that away and use that as well. We've also provided links to trained professionals, and you know, it's important to let parents know that we're not trained counsellors. If well, our head of pastoral care is actually a trained counsellor, but many of us at school are not trained counsellors or psychiatrists. We are teachers, and however much experience and training that we have, sometimes we do need to refer students to trained professionals, and a lot of the time it's making that just, you know, it's making that aware, that need, you know, making families aware of that need sometimes, because sometimes families can be in denial, so that can be quite a tricky conversation to have. So these are some helpful links that we shared with parents in the past. There's stuff here that is specifically with dealing with parental challenges during COVID-19, some links to learning, mindfulness and well-being. We also have some ways to support child's learning and development, and where we're a through school from nursery all the way up to IB, we have tried to cover that in those links there. So motivating teenagers has been a big one that we've found, that's been quite successful, like over the COVID closure. Developing and maintaining relationships, you know, keeping that connections there. So tips for good communication, 10 things to never say to a teenager. I thought that was a great Guardian article. Keeping safe online as well, which goes well with our IT user policy. Supporting mental health, there's some good links there that are both, mine is specifically Hong Kong based, and there's also Young Minds, which is based in the UK. There's Safe Minds, an Australian based charity, and also there's the bottom link there, mental health UK.org, supporting services supporting young people. Just want to focus on that one, especially because they've just put out, some of you may have seen this already, but some great resources based on a series of activities that students can participate in called Bloom. Now, they do actually offer training, but unfortunately it's only for UK schools, but they do give full consent to you using their materials, and there's some lovely worksheets and little animated videos that are really worth sharing with your students. So also brain exercises, Go Noodle, great for especially small kids, and Get Moving. And then official updates that we found beneficial just to send to our parents from the Hong Kong Education Bureau, and also got to remember that our parents may actually be in that position where they do need to talk to someone as well. And Samaritans, I've actually done training with Samaritans in the UK. Excellent organisation, and I'm really pleased to see them in Hong Kong as well. So this is a how to seek professional help, and I've included a few contacts on here. These are contacts that that we have shared with our parents, but it's important that you do. We don't necessarily say that we recommend these practitioners, but what we can say is, from the experience that we've had with them, we've had some good feedback, and sometimes it's just nice just to give parents a little bit of a direction of where to go, just as a starting point. Okay. So that is it. We've come to the end of the presentation. Thank you so much for listening to me. Sorry, that's gone on for quite some time there, but I hope you found that useful. So a last thought, just a bit of a takeaway for you. There is still a stigma around mental illness, and it's important to talk about it, especially with young people. And this reduces the stigma around it. We've built a fantastic rapport with our parents and students, and they know that their well-being, their mental health is super important, just as important as their physical health. So if we can spread that message throughout our schools, I think we'll be doing a great service to the students that we do teach. So that's all from me. I was just wondering if there are any questions from any of you. So just pull up. Now, forgive me, I'm a little bit new to Zoom because we've been doing all our calls via Microsoft Teams. So I'm just kind of looking, and I can't see anyone with hands up or anything like that. And can't see. Oh, thank you, Mark. Thank you, Renan. Thank you, Lisa. Thank you. Thank you very much, guys. So one last thing from you all. We would love your feedback. So if you do have a few moments to spare, then please use the QR code or the link on this presentation. Just give us a little bit of feedback. It'd be fantastic. But again, thank you so much for listening to me, and I hope that some of those strategies and points can be useful to you in your schools. Okay, take care, guys, and stay safe. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.